I'm in love with America.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Archer, and I will be your host this morning. I want to welcome you to the 5th annual Dine for Veterans. This year we've changed it up a little bit, and we've decided to pivot and do a virtual event. We have a wonderful panel planned for you by the Help Our Wounded Foundation. But I first want to thank FPL for sponsoring this event. They are always helping the community, and we are extremely grateful. In addition, La Cigale and Another Broken Egg in Delray Beach are our restaurant sponsors. As you might know, Veterans Day was originally called Armistice Day. It was the ceasefire on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month that signaled the end of World War I. It wasn't until the following April that the peace treaty was signed, so we always honor our veterans on November 11th. The Help Our Wounded Foundation was founded 6 years ago by Maggie Bryant. Mrs. Bryant is a part-time Delray Beach resident who is passionate about helping veterans. The foundation's mission is advancing the quality of life for individuals, families, and communities by advocating, educating, and providing funding for, as well as indirect access to hyperbaric oxygen therapy. The foundation has helped 200 veterans this year. Each of these veterans has been silently suffering with post-traumatic stress, and in some situations, they also have traumatic brain injury. It was determined in 2012 by the Department of Veteran Affairs Medical Health Services Suicide Prevention Program that 22 veterans commit suicide every day. Since the start of the pandemic, it has sadly increased to 26. Every veteran we fund has a pre and post SPECT scan and a pre and post cognitive test. Every single veteran we have helped has seen some level of improvement. Some have improved so much that they have reduced or eliminated their medications. The recommended protocol for post-traumatic stress is 40 hyperbaric oxygen therapy treatment sessions. Each session costs us a reduced rate of $185. The total cost of treating one veteran, including the scans and the tests, is $10,525. Your support helps us support one hero at a time. I would like to introduce our first panelist to you. Sarah Crane is the Executive Director of the Help Our Wounded Foundation. Sarah graduated magna cum laude with a BS in psychology from Virginia Commonwealth University and received her Merit MS in cognitive neuroscience from University College London. She worked in London 2 years as a research assistant in the field of developmental psychopathology, which cultivated her passion in the study of post-traumatic stress disorder. Sarah's going to talk about and explain exactly what hyperbaric oxygen therapy is. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you all for joining us today for this special event. We don't have a lot of time together, so I'll dive right in, no pun intended. Let's talk about the term hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So a lot of people can't even say hyperbaric oxygen therapy, so we'll break it down a little bit. The word hyper means more, and baric comes from the Greek word for pressure. So when you have hyperbaric, you're literally saying more pressure. So you take that in context, and the term hyperbaric oxygen therapy literally means oxygen and more pressure. Now, medical grade hyperbaric oxygen therapy is when 100% oxygen is administered under a pressurized environment where the atmospheric pressure is greater or equal to 1.5 ATA, or atmospheres. And that's about the equivalent of being 18 feet underwater. So you might be asking, well, what does oxygen do for us? Well, we need oxygen. The atmospheric air that we breathe right now is roughly 21% oxygen. And that oxygen is breathed in through your nose and your mouth, travels down your throat, and is then, of course, processed by your lungs, attached to hemoglobin, and transported throughout your body. That's the normal process. When you breathe in 100% oxygen in a pressurized environment, the pressure condenses the oxygen bubbles so small that they're able to be transported not just by the hemoglobin, but by every fluid in your body, lymphatic, cerebrospinal, everything is carrying and distributing oxygen. So what does this do for brain injuries and post-traumatic stress? Let's go back on a journey to Bio 101 and basic cell structure. Do you remember what the powerhouse of the cell is called? It's the mitochondria. The mitochondria synthesizes nutrients and oxygen and turns that into ATP, or energy. So when the mitochondria can't get oxygen, that energy factory just kind of shuts down. And in the brain, this oxygen can be disrupted by numerous biological processes, including a jolt to the brain or to the body, building inflammation, or like I said, numerous other causes. But when that happens, the cells then go dormant, or as I like to say, they become sleeping beauty cells. So once oxygen is returned to these cells, that oxygen acts like Prince Charming's kiss and awakens those sleeping beauty cells. So in chronic traumatic brain injuries, which is 6 months more or out from the injury, inflammation has disrupted oxygen flow to brain cells in that affected area, and they become sleeping beauty cells. So they're not dead, but they just don't have the energy. They don't have the oxygen. They're sleeping. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy allows that Prince Charming's kiss of oxygen to re-enter those areas and wake them up again. And in acute brain injuries, hyperbaric oxygen therapy acts like almost like an ice pack for the brain, and it decreases the amount of swelling that can happen inside the skull from an injury, because your brain is kind of floating in your skull, and the skull is rather hard on the inside. So when you have a hit to the body, your brain kind of bounces around inside the skull, and inflammation builds on either side. And that inflammation, as we mentioned before, can disrupt this oxygen delivery system. So by applying hyperbaric oxygen therapy, we're reducing the amount of inflammation that will be building inside the brain and disrupting those oxygen delivery systems. Concerning post-traumatic stress, the etiology of post-traumatic stress is still a bit of an enigma, but there is growing amount of research showing the vast symptom overlap between traumatic brain injuries and post-traumatic stress. And this overlap led researchers to examine the brains of deceased veterans who have been diagnosed with severe post-traumatic stress, but not with traumatic brain injuries. And they found a consistent pattern of brain scarring in 7 of the veterans that were examined. Now, considering there are over 100 billion neurons in your brain, finding any sort of distinctive pattern is a significant finding. So this leads us to think that maybe some cases of post-traumatic stress are more physical injuries and brain injuries as opposed to a chemical or an electrical imbalance. I could just talk about this all day, but those are just some of the basic ways that hyperbaric oxygen therapy helps with acute brain injuries, chronic brain injuries, and post-traumatic stress. But I'm not the focus today. So Lisa, I'm going to turn it back over to you to introduce our panelists.
Thank you, Sarah. It's all great information. Thank you. So we have 3 veterans on the panel today. All of these veterans have received hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and they're here to tell their story. The first is Brian Fleming. Brian is a Purple Heart recipient who served as a team leader in an infantry platoon in the U.S. Army's 10th Mountain Division while fighting the ground war in Afghanistan. His vehicle was blown up twice, and he was severely wounded in action when a suicide bomber exploded 3 feet away from him in Kandahar on July 24th, 2006. Following 14 months of burn treatment, reconstructive surgery, and rehabilitation, Brian began speaking and writing books on human resilience. Now, his mission is to help couples save or enhance their marriages at marriagesbottleplan.com. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So tell us about your journey through the military and what led you to hyperbaric oxygen therapy.
Yeah, pretty much like you said in my introduction, I deployed to Afghanistan in 2006 with the Army's 10th Mountain Division. I was a team leader in an infantry platoon. Like you said, 2 vehicles blown up. The first was a roadside bomb, double stack of anti-tank mines buried in the road on April 18th of 2006. And then July 24th, a few months later, suicide bomber in a minivan pulled right up next to my door as we were driving down the highway, Highway 1 through Kandahar. We got right up next to us. We went to pass him on the left because he was going slow. We got up next to him, and that's when he blew up. Everything exploded. I woke up burned and bloody, laying face down in a ditch on the side of the road. My helmet was no longer on my head. I had a fountain of blood pouring out of my face. I had a full face and neck 2nd-degree burn, which is obviously healed now. 3rd-degree burns on both my hands, full thickness, 3rd degree. And I spent the following 14 months at Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas, getting burn treatment, reconstructive surgery, things like that.
When did you discover that you had post-traumatic stress? Was it during that rehabilitation period, or did it take a long time to show its true signs?
Well, I think my wife noticed it because just coming home, I was quite different. As you can imagine, you live in a war zone, for any amount of time, and it will change a person. And it's not always a bad thing. You just have to get a handle on it. Me, I didn't personally notice anything in particular because I was so used to just being how I was. It was probably a year to a year and a half after being home that I realized, man, I'm really high strung. Like I get angry a lot, like real easy. My fuse used to be real patient and long, and now it's just, man, if there's one thing, it just there's that, and my headaches, and trying to remember things, because I had a photographic memory when I deployed. I was literally told by a doctor as a kid, I have a photographic memory, and now after being injured, I was at the complete opposite end of the spectrum. I could tell you things from my childhood that are insignificant, but I remember, but I couldn't tell you what I had for breakfast that day.
How is it affecting your relationship with your children? Were you able to work?
Yeah, before I had HBOT, it did affect a lot of that, because even a simple task, a checklist to go through, right. If I had 5 things on a checklist, I would go down, I'd do each of them, but I'd have to keep going back and checking to make sure that I did them. It was almost like I would know I did it, but then I'd forget. Like I would know I looked at it, but I wouldn't remember if I had checked it off or not. And just little things like that. Couldn't hardly go to sleep at night. Just my mind was wide awake and alert, up until 2 or 3 in the morning every night.
And so since you've had hyperbaric oxygen therapy, what has changed for you?
The biggest thing, and my wife would tell you this because she noticed it immediately after I got back from HBOT, was that her and I generally go to bed together now at the same time. She's always like a 10:30, 10 o'clock or less, beforehand person. Well, I would lay there for hours beforehand. So there was no point in ever going to bed and just laying there. Well, for really the first time in our marriage, I fell asleep the other night at 8:45 on the couch, and I woke up at 9:30 and went to bed. I woke up the next day at 5:30 a.m., putting my running shoes on. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to get up. I'm well rested. I feel energized. I'm ready for the day. I'm not sluggish. My wife will tell you, and the biggest thing to her is that just the fact that her and I can go to bed at the same time now. She gets to go to bed with her husband. That means a lot to her. And it was just something that was wrong with my brain that was stopping that. And it's so meaningful to her. She feels like she's married again, not right. That she didn't, but that's a huge issue for her and a huge improvement.
That's awesome. Well, we thank you for your service, Brian. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Command Sergeant Major Thomas Sheridan. Tom served 24 years as a Special Forces Green Beret. He suffered multiple TBIs and concussions from parachuting and fast roping. He has had multiple joint surgeries and spinal surgeries. Tom is currently teaching yoga for Connected Warriors. Welcome, Tom.
Hi, how are you, Lisa?
I'm good, thank you. Tell us about your service and how you found out about post-traumatic stress and how it was affecting your life.
Okay. Before I even start there, I want to thank you and Sarah for the opportunity for being here today, and the Howell Foundation for sponsoring me, along with the Green Beret Foundation, for my HBOT treatment. I wanted to give a shout out to Connie and Ann at the facility as well, which made treatment there exceptional and easily palatable for someone who has claustrophobic tendencies after being caught up one time. I want to give a shout out to the Marine Corps for their birthday today. It's 245 years, and it's because of folks like that we can live free. And to all the veterans, tomorrow's our day as well. As you said before, the 11th hour, the 11th day of the 11th month, the Armistice Day Agreement. And without that, we say the land of the free and the home of the brave. I say the land of the free because of the brave. For all the fellow veterans who left us on the battlefield or at home, eventually, may they rest in eternal peace. For me, I started my career at a young age. I gave up scholarships for college to go into the military, specifically into special forces. I had a contract back then for that. At any time, should I have failed any portion of the course, which was a few years long, you go for the good of the Army, which means they can make you a cook or whatever. And so obviously I had a fierce determination to make it all the way through. I did not want to be a medic. I wanted to be a demolition guy. I wanted to blow things up. I barely could put a Band-Aid on back then. But going through the course, you learn an extensive amount. It's like going through a PA course, physician assistance course. And you learn a tremendous amount of medicine, especially in trauma medicine. We learn all kinds of the different areas of medicine, pharmacy, veterinary, and you name it, for the areas that we work in. But trauma is our specialty. Thank God I had that background because I suffered a lot of injuries in my career. I've had multiple traumatic brain injuries, some from parachuting, fast roping, others from explosions or backblast, from room clearing or compression with inside the rooms, where it definitely rung my bell. But, you know, that type of mentality, you just keep going. You live on the edge. You live on high adrenaline. So each day became more challenges and more interesting. You live on adrenaline. So you train to work at night. So we call own the night. And so during the day, you're even training or getting ready for that night. So your clock is always on. It's always on. You have a light switch in your room and you turn the switch off. You expect that light to go off. With our light switch, it sometimes gets burnt out. And so you're on 24/7, 365. And very little time do you get to gear down. And so even when you go home to your family and everything else, you're kind of like so hyper vigilant about everything. And eventually over time with all the injuries, you know, from a broken neck, broken back, traumatic brain injuries, surgeries on every major joint, it becomes overwhelming, but you just keep plugging away. And, you know, thanks to my medical background, I was able to help stay focused on my treatment. I knew what was coming next. When I got out, however, I went to the VA for treatment for all these injuries, eventually became 100% disabled because of all the injuries. You go to the VA, you walk in, and you're a number. And you get to go to this doctor who doesn't know anything about you, doesn't really care about you. And he's like, take a pill and come back and see me in a few months. Do this lab work and come back in a couple months. And then you come back, you wait for hours to get in there and see people after months of waiting. And they tell you this and they give you another pill. So luckily, because of my medical background, I was able to be a healthcare advocate for myself and guide the treatment to get better. But one thing I couldn't undo was the depression and the PTSD. You can live with the joint pain and all those things. You just start taking, Motrin and doing whatever. But having the medical background helped me be my own healthcare advocate. And I feel bad for those guys who don't have that medical background because they do not know what to do next. And you talk about going from 22 to 26 a day. That's horrific. Those stats are horrific. Mm-hmm. That we have that many veterans dying a day. We have that many veterans living on the street, without a roof over their head. So now it's like we looked around for treatment. I had heard about the HBOT, not your HBOT, but just hyperbaric treatment.
Yeah. How did you hear about it?
Years and years ago, I heard from different people about how it works and how the Joe Namath Foundation up here in Palm Beach Gardens, Jupiter area, especially at the Jupiter Medical Center. So I signed up for it. And I was like 300 and something on the list or whatever. And the list never moved. I called every month, and the list never seemed to move, and no one really gave a damn, if I was alive or dead. And I never got a call. So like almost 10 years go by. And my dear friend found you guys. She's like a pit bull. When she researches and goes after something, she'll find something. And I was kind of giving up, I was losing it as far as not being able to stay focused. I couldn't stay on task. I'd be working on something. I'd walk away to go get a tool and I get distracted. Then I forget what I was going for. And some people say, oh, that's, I get that too. But when you have it all day, all the time, and you can't finish things, you look for words in a conversation and you can't finish a sentence, or you get lost in the conversation. And hopefully you're with close friends that can help re-guide you and get you back on track. So you become, a contributory member of that conversation, and not look like the dumbass sitting over there, And when I found...
Yeah, are you feeling better since you've had the treatments?
Well, when we did the treatments with HBOT, it started out like, I want to tell some of the veterans who may be watching or listening to this rather, that, we all have some sort of form of claustrophobic for the most part, claustrophobia. So you think you're going into this tube. And when I first went down there and visited the facility, I saw the tubes and they reminded me of an MRI tube. And immediately I kind of pulled back and I was like, oh, I can't go in there. I can't go in there. But then I looked at it, I studied it, and I realized how much bigger it is than an MRI tube, how it's clear plastic, how you can look and have, the TV on and be distracted by the TV. You have a phone right next to you, and you have an attending person, like I had Ann, right next to me, who whenever I looked over at her, she was like looking right at me. She'd pick up the phone if I had a question or concern. And so it took a lot of the anxiety out of it. I tried Xanax. Because, someone said, we'll take a Xanax. So I tried a half a pill. I tried the full thing and they're like, okay, whatever. And then I tried half and I weaned myself off after several visits. And one thing I started noticing about halfway through is I was able to sleep again. I haven't been able to sleep for decades.
Right.
I may get 2 or 3 hours of sporadic sleep a night between nightmares and PTSD and everything reenacting in my brain. So hyper vigilant, I'd hear something, I'm ready to pull my gun out for crying out loud to see what's going on. And then I realized, wow, after, the treatments, I was like, wow, I'm sleeping 8-9 hours sound straight through.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I was just like, I woke up like a real person again. I didn't know what that was like anymore.
Yeah.
You wake up and feel functional and to be able to be wanting to do something, and then doing it and be able to stay on track while you're doing it. It was just incredible. I don't know. It's just the being able to stay on track. And I had just printed out my results. Sarah sent them to me around the print machine. But, they give you a test pre and post, a cognitive test pre and post. And it was amazing to see how much things shifted over to the right, as I would say, from reds and yellows all the way over to bright greens on what you have. The pre and post SPECT scan, the SPECT scan before was like Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
And then when you look at it afterwards, everything's kind of like filled in and like smooth. And it was just unbelievable, the results and how I feel. I kind of, when the things were read to me and I understood everything, I broke down crying.
Yeah, we were really happy to help you, and we appreciate you sharing your story, Tom.
Thank you.
We'll circle back. I have one more other veteran to introduce, and then we're going to open up for questions, and these gentlemen can answer any questions that you have. Our next panelist is Carrie Reichbach. Carrie is a U.S. Army veteran and the founder and current president of the nonprofit Gray Team Military Community. He has used his own recovery methods to help at-risk veterans avoid the pitfalls of transitioning into civilian life. Welcome, Carrie.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here and extremely happy to support the Howe Foundation because I think the work that you're doing is absolutely incredible.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about your military journey and about your post-traumatic stress situation.
Sure. My story's a little bit different. My difficulty was the transition process from the warrior mentality into being a civilian. Mm-hmm. It was not a smooth transition by any means. I went directly from carrying a rifle in the Army to carrying a pistol as a police officer. I had that whole accelerated high adrenaline mentality that Tom was referring to earlier. And it took me quite a while to begin to actually shut that down. The journey was kind of long and arduous. And one of the things that stuck out to me is that I had friends who were doing the same thing from my unit in the Army, and some of them were just giving up, kind of living in the bottom of a bottle of alcohol, and just throwing their lives away, or going into some nefarious forms of private military contracting to try and keep that adrenaline high going as long as their bodies could withstand, the stress. And so it dawned on me that because my experiences were so common that there needed to be kind of a pathway, if you will, to heal, not just the body, but the mind, and kind of treat the mind and the body as one unit. So I began kind of a journey to help myself as well as everyone else who was coming behind me in that path. And I began taking care of newer transitioning veterans who were just coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq. And interestingly enough, one of the veterans that came into my care that I actually provided a roof for in my guest house and so on, had serious TBI from, he was a machine gunner in the Marine Corps. And people don't understand that when you have a heavy weapon next to your head that you're firing regularly, that every single one of those rounds that goes off, and there's literally hundreds of thousands of them while you're carrying that through your tour, each one is a mini explosion, and you're getting the impact of that next to your head over and over and over. And when I met this individual, I could tell he was extremely intelligent, but very scattered, couldn't even finish a sentence. And just, it was heartbreaking. He was so frustrated with his inability to progress, even though he had the innate intelligence, he just couldn't function properly. His whole cerebral cortex was affected. So I watched him go through hyperbaric oxygen, and it was like night and day. As he finished his treatment, he just slowly elevated higher and higher and higher. And immediately I saw the benefits of it. And then as fate would have it, I suffered a severe head trauma, probably 4 or 5 months after his experience. And he was actually there at the time. My head was split open with about, I'm going to say about 600 pounds had dropped on my head with a steel bar. And after a trip to the ER and having put my head back together again, he said, you've got to go to HBOT. You're going to suffer some severe damage. So I went to meet with Sarah Crane, and I was feeling pretty good about myself. I thought this might be unnecessary, but I had seen the good that had come from it. So I was open-minded. And as Tom had referred to earlier, I was given a neurological exam, and it was heartbreaking. I've always prided myself on being pretty able to express myself, and suddenly my vocabulary had just come down drastically. I mean, I had all my X marks in the red, which doesn't mean anything to those of you who are listening, but basically you're looking at a test of your cognitive skill sets. And when you see how diminished they are, it's heartbreaking, because am I going to be like that the rest of my life? So because of the severity of the injury, but it had been so close to the time of my therapy, I went in immediately, and after taking 2 more neurological exams, it was like, again, night and day. I got my vocabulary back.
The old Carrie came back.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, instead of trying to pull words out of this vague area up here, I was just able to immediately get all my vocabulary back. So I just want to say that anyone who's even thinking of considering this, they need to do it. And the Howe Foundation is fantastic.
Thank you, Carrie.
Around everything that I needed to do and allowing me to continue to do the work that I do. As you can see, this is an amazing facility behind me. That's Gray Team. And we now have hyperbaric oxygen through Howe Foundation available to the veterans who come through for treatment here, because I can't imagine anything that's more effective.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing your story. We asked for questions in advance, and we did receive a number of questions, which I'm going to start pulling out. But in the meantime, if anyone has any other questions, just, put them through the chat and we will get to them. The first question, some of you gentlemen answered, and it was, how did you first hear about hyperbaric oxygen therapy? Tom, you shared how you first heard about it. Brian, how did you first hear about it?
I think it was through my friend Debbie Lee, who a good friend of mine. I think you know her.
Yes, America's Mighty Warriors.
Yeah, I think it was through her, and somehow connections were made beyond that just a few years down the line.
Okay. And so I'd like to ask all of you to answer this one. It's, what was your biggest everyday challenge before receiving HBOT? Tom, do you want to go first?
Besides no sleep, staying focused.
Okay. And Carrie, your biggest challenge was the word search, I think you said?
I think my biggest challenge was just being able to continue to do the work that I do to help other veterans. I know that my ability to organize, my ability to speak publicly, pretty much everything that we all take for granted was deeply affected.
And Brian, what was your biggest challenge?
Other than the sleep, I would say it was the ability to focus on a task and see it through to completion, because I was just so easily distracted by so many things, and then my mind would feel like it's resetting. So the ability to focus on something and see it through to the end, that was huge.
And did you notice, another question was side effects. Did any of you notice any side effects?
From HBOT?
From HBOT.
I didn't notice any negative side effects at all.
Yeah, I was going to say the same exact thing. No negative side effects.
Yeah, I would have to third that. There were quite a few positive ones. I think one of the things I didn't expect was during the treatment, my sleep actually improved pretty dramatically, and I had a lot more energy. Which I didn't know was going to happen, but I felt more positive during the day.
Just quantifying that, did your sleep, the quality and the quantity of your sleep improve? Was it both quality and quantity?
Yes, absolutely.
I would agree with
By
that.
far.
Hi, guys. I have 2 questions that just popped up in the chat. One of them is, did any of you hear about hyperbaric oxygen therapy from within the Veterans Health Administration?
No. and I still haven't.
Yeah, not at all.
And I have to go along with that. I'm under the VA healthcare system, and they never mentioned it.
Thank you. And then another one is one that I actually had, which is I've been seeing an increasing awareness about brain fog. And so people are noticing that they're having that as a result of COVID-19. The survivors are noticing that they have brain fog. So I've seen all these articles kind of popping up around that topic. Did you have brain fog, and did you notice it clearing as a result of hyperbaric, or did hyperbaric affect it at all?
For me, it definitely cleared it up and helped. Absolutely.
I was in major brain fog for a while, and it just kept getting worse. And the hyperbaric treatment definitely helped with that, clear it up. It brings you back on focus, able to follow things through, the conversations you're able to participate in again. You just don't feel like you're left out,
Can we talk about medications for a minute? Are any... have you been on medication? Did you reduce any medications? Did your medication regimen change at all before and after hyperbaric services or hyperbaric treatments?
My medications decreased, both in the amount or dosage, so to say, and or eliminating them.
That's awesome. And Carrie, did you?
I actually am not on any medications at all, so I'm probably not qualified to answer that.
And Brian, were you on any meds before HPOT?
I'm with Carrie. I'm in the same boat.
I have one question that came through the chat as soon as I hopped off. Another one came through, which is, did you all, going through hyperbaric oxygen therapy can be a very big commitment, not just financially, but also in terms of time. Did you have any trouble adhering to your treatment protocol?
I didn't have any trouble because I flew to South Florida and I stayed there for a month. And my only job was twice a day for an hour to go lay in a chamber. And then the rest of the day was mine. So I was literally, transplanted to Florida to do that. So that was my job twice a day for an hour. So it was very, very easy. You all made it very easy.
When I first started, COVID had just kicked in. So it kind of delayed my treatment a little bit. But the HPOT facility worked around it. And they had strict protocols that you had to adhere to coming into the facility. Other than that, it was on me to get my butt there and do the treatment and be there every day. And for the treatment I was getting and at the price, free.
Tom, I hear that you have someone else competing for your attention right now.
Yeah. My service dog that I'm training is telling me, I want to come out of the playpen.
Carrie, what about you? Any challenges with adhering to your protocol?
Well, luckily I have, a unique situation with my work, so I'm allowed to kind of schedule around it. But pretty much as Brian was saying, the ability to get it mostly done in the mornings allowed me to continue to do whatever I needed to do in the afternoon. So I would bang out 2 sessions, one before lunch, one after, and then have the rest of my day to myself. So anybody who's considering it and worried about that it's going to disrupt your life, you can go immediately back to work after your second session, or they will even schedule you for just 1 session a day if that need be. And there's no downtime at all. Other than the time you're just sitting in the chamber or changing clothes to get into the chamber. There's nothing. You get out of there and you feel refreshed and great, and you can drive right on.
Sarah, I think we have time for one more question. I see them popping up on chat. Do you want to pick one?
They are popping up on chat. So this is an interesting one. I'll just go in the order that they came in. What do veterans recommend we do to get the word out about using hyperbaric oxygen therapy for traumatic brain injuries and post-traumatic stress? And is there anything that you think other veterans can do to help us continue to get the word out?
I think just word of mouth. Tell your buddies. If it's been helpful, tell your friend. I have 2 people coming down to you this week for HBOT. And I met one guy in Indiana for one weekend. I was there last month, and he had struggles like I did. And he said, "You're kidding me. Everything you're saying I'm dealing with." And I said, "Well, here's the information." And there was another guy, same exact thing. And they're both going to start. One started today and another starting this week.
It's awesome.
That's awesome, man. I think word of mouth is extremely important. I'm not on social platforms like Facebook or anything like that. But I imagine getting the word out that way would be another source to make it more known. Because if you don't know what you don't know, as they say. So once you find out about this, it's like anything else. If you spread the word, it's a positive word. You'll get good feedback and good results.
I just want to add that one of the things that people are misunderstanding is that, they think of hyperbaric oxygen as being locked in like a steel chamber that divers use to undo the bends or something like that. And it's kind of terrifying. And they don't understand how you've made it so comfortable and convenient to do. And one of the things at Gray Team that we have 2 veterans who are currently undergoing treatment at the HOW. And they both have such positive experiences because they're basically just relaxing, watching movies, meditating. It's so comfortable. And I think that needs to go out to the community, that this is not something that, you're going to feel miserable or have to put up with. This is something that actually is just very, very easy to do.
Yeah, I like what you just said, because they put me in a bed in a chamber with a pillow and a blanket, and I watched the History Channel twice a day for a month. All right, so that was the extent of the grueling weirdness. It was literally that. That's all it was.
I looked around sometimes and I'd see people just crashed out, man. They were sleeping and, some watching TV, but I think it's a really easy thing to do. And like I said earlier, you think it's like an MRI tube. It's not. It's clear plastic. It's much, much bigger. I'm a big guy and I fit in there easily, so there's no excuses. Damn it, just get there.
Yeah, I was actually able to sit completely upright inside the tube, and I'm 6 foot tall. So I literally could sit up straight at a 90-degree angle with my head barely touching the top. So there's lots of space.
Sarah, do we have any more questions? They seem to be rolling in.
People are starting to feel comfortable, which is great. So we've got some questions. If everyone still has some time, we'd love to keep asking them. Gentlemen, can you stay on? Can we extend this a little bit further?
Absolutely.
So the next one, I'm wondering if anyone knows, since the recent hyperbaric oxygen therapy access for veterans bill passed recently in Congress and was signed by the president, is it not mandatory for the Veterans Health Administration to tell veterans about hyperbaric oxygen therapy? And I believe I can answer that one and say I don't believe it is mandatory. But, obviously, the more people hear about it would be great. I think, getting the Veterans Health Administration a little bit more education on the benefits of hyperbaric oxygen therapy and what it can do for brain injuries and post-traumatic stress will help encourage those referrals. If anyone has anything to add, gentlemen.
I think the VA needs we talked about this and how there's a grant now and it's not going to cost them anything. They need to come on board and be part of this new test or process now to see how it works and to verify it. Because like I've mentioned to you, like I'm seeing some friends at SOCOM in a couple of weeks and, over in Tampa, and most of them are fellow Sergeant Major buddies that were on my team back in the day who were in charge there or retired, but still working there. And they have access to a lot of dive chambers and facilities, and they have some money. But the thing is, they need to have memorandums of agreement or understanding with the VA as well. These things need to be processed, just like us with Connected Warriors. We had to have these MOAs with the VA center to get in there and do these things. It's just a matter of doing it. We got to crack the code, get in there and just do it.
Yeah. So another question, how soon did you experience changes and did that encourage you to continue?
On probably night number 3 to 5 of my first week of HBOT, I realized I was sleeping more fully through the night.
I would have to say that it was even quicker for me. Within 2 or 3 treatments, I felt the brain fog that we talked about earlier is something that you feel after a head injury. You know, you just know everything's not working correctly, and you don't know why. And I know that for me, I experienced kind of a clearing within 2 or 3 days of treatment, and it just kept getting better and better and better and better.
Mine, I didn't do 2 days. I was doing 1 a day treatments. So it took probably into my second week of treatments. So probably 6, 7, 8 treatments where I actually started noticing the brain fog starting to lift. The sleep started kicking in more. About 10 to 15 treatments. I was sleeping much, much better. And I had pep in my step. I felt like energized, like I wanted to be present and do things, where before I was just kind of like sliding away. I was kind of like recessing into life.
The next one is not a question, but also a comment from Pam. Thank you, Brian, Carrie, and Tom, for your service and for helping get the word out about life-changing hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So thank you, Pam, for that little pep. And thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your experiences, too. We've got some more questions. I'll just keep going as long as we have time. And the next one is there medical evidence of the long-term results versus near-term outcomes? And I think, Carrie, you're the farthest one out from having received HBOT. So I'm going to ask you, how do you feel?
Amazing. You know, I think that when we took the neurological tests, I had, almost completely recovered. And I was told, I think by you, Sarah, that it would only get better with time. And I have to agree that I think I'm not only back where I was, but I may even be better than I was. And
isn't that nice?
So, Carrie, I think we're going to have to give you another neuropsych test just to see how you perform after some time. So we're still, as to the question itself, we're still working on gathering long-term outcomes, but it's a great idea. And like I said, I just gave Carrie the warning, and you guys can hear that, we're going to definitely follow up on that and make sure that we capture some of those long-term results as well. The next question is from Alana. How can talking about it reduce the stigma that getting care and treatment doesn't mean you're weak, for lack of a better word?
I want to answer this because I speak on this to the military a lot, and I used to be a knucklehead too. Here's the deal. If you have a health problem and you refuse to get help, you're not strong, you're stupid. All right? And I mean that with all my heart. If you know you have an issue and you don't get help, I get where it comes from. We're taught, fight, complete the mission, though I be the lone survivor. I get it. We're trained that way. But I also think of this. Everybody is on a battlefield, especially our veterans after they come home. When I was with my 17-man scout sniper platoon in Afghanistan on the ground, we had what's called close air support that was flying overhead on many of our missions. These planes, these A-10 pilots, these helicopter pilots, they could see our battlefield from a direction, from a vantage point we could not see. And they could see things on the battlefield that we could not see. Now, just because they didn't know what it's like to be boots on the ground doesn't mean we shouldn't listen to them. Because if you get into a gunfight with a superior enemy force and you have close air support on hand, but you refuse to use it because you don't want to look weak, or you don't want command to think you can't handle what's happening on the ground, you're a bad leader. You're going to get people killed, if not yourself. And if you do make it back, you're probably going to be fired. So if you have close air support on hand, if you have allies on hand to help, smart leaders, smart people get the help. And besides, if you think nobody's noticing that you don't want anyone to know you're dealing with things, trust me, we know you're dealing with it. We can all tell. Most people just aren't saying anything. So don't be stupid, be smart. If you have a health problem, go get help. That's what smart people do. Rant over with.
Brian, I totally concur with your assessment on that and your analogy to it. because I'd fire your ass if you didn't use the resources available to you.
That's right.
You know, especially as a leader, you know, we're all trained to be leaders eventually. You need to step up and own the issue, own the problem, and work on it and take care of it. If there's something out there that can help get you better and you don't use it, you're a freaking fool.
I think that's a perfect time to wrap things up. What do you think, Sarah?
I don't know. We've got 9 new messages right here. Let me read through a couple of them.
Okay.
Which VA treatments did you get when you went to the VA and expressed challenges, either with traumatic brain injury or post-traumatic stress?
They just threw a pill at you. I mean, what are you dealing with? Okay, here's a script. Here's a pill. There's no treatment. There's just, what pill do we throw? I mean, I've literally sat in 5-minute appointments, and they're like, all right, what's wrong? Okay, try this pill and this pill and this pill. Wow. And if this one affects this one, then take this other one. And it's just, it turns into this downward cycle. So yeah, it's hard to take them seriously.
You wind up with a bag of pills, like Brian's saying. And then if you go to sessions with them, back when I was going, I came out of those sessions more PO'd than when I went in. And I had road rage going home for crying out loud because of it. They just don't know how to handle it. And maybe nowadays it's different, but.
Actually, Tom, I would love to tell you that it is different, but it is not. I recently had a little run-in with the VA, and it was in relation to what HBOT does and what we use at Gray Team, low-level laser therapy, to reduce inflammation and also elevate ATP like HBOT. And I was basically told by one of the higher ups, who was 18 months from retirement, that we're going to keep doing what we're doing. We don't want to really get into anything that we don't know about. We don't have the time to investigate it. So we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. And I specifically said, even though what you're doing hasn't worked for 30 years, you're going to keep doing it. And they said, yes.
It's so disheartening.
Right.
So shifting a little bit, going back to your protocols, we have a question from Mason, which is, which pressure did you dive to? Do you know what the deepest point amount you dive to? Was it 1.5 atmospheres or 1.75 or 2 or more?
I went to 1.5.
Yeah, I think it's all set at 1.5.
1.5.
Everybody's the same.
Yeah. And another question, which is, gentlemen, would you mind if we share your email addresses so that people can get in touch with you after this panel concludes today?
I don't have a problem.
I'm fine with that.
Wonderful. Chris also asked a question. Are there any medical health issues that would prevent someone from being accepted into the HBOT? I believe there are. First of all, you have to be able to breathe. You can't really have severe breathing issues. I believe certain chemotherapies are actually contraindications. I know that there are some more well-informed people who are on this call who can handle that question. Usually for Howe Foundation, we leave that with the expertise of the individual hyperbaric oxygen therapy centers that we partner with. So they have their own medical staff, and they usually will meet with somebody, well, not usually, they always meet with somebody to make sure that there are no medical contraindications. There are only very few of them, but they do exist. And so that is something to be aware of as well. But I mean, in all of the veterans that we've treated and all of the people that we've helped since 2014, I think we've had one person who felt that it was just a bit too claustrophobic. So Tom, I'm so glad that you said, even with your claustrophobia, that you were able to go through treatment and that you stuck to it and kept going.
Persevered.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So last question, if I can. Also, Ted said thank you all for your service and also for your advocacy for hyperbaric oxygen therapy. But my last question would be, COVID has been a mental health crisis, right? And so my question really is, our veterans have been through trauma. They've been through the war zone, the battlefield. Do you have any parting lessons of resilience things that you've learned, ways to cope, ways to help you through that you would impart to other people?
I think I can touch on that. One of the ways we go through some really severe stress and difficult situations is because we have all of our buddies around us. That creates resiliency. The expression "embrace the suck" is very real. You can get through anything as long as you have your team around you. And I think that in these difficult times where we become isolated because we can't do social gatherings and things like that, one of the things veterans have to be very, very careful of is not losing that connectivity with each other, because that's life-saving. And I think that we should all continue to reach out to each other and make sure that we're okay, because there's no way to overstate how important that is.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, all three of you, Carrie, Tom, Brian. We thank you for your service. We thank you for participating today and sharing your thoughts about hyperbaric oxygen therapy and sharing your personal experiences. We appreciate it. Also, thank you again to Florida Power and Light for sponsoring this event. And we thank everyone for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm in love with America. For me, there are no replicas. Let all her children sing from sea to shining sea. I'm in love with America. Let all who hear it call, no, not a fear at all. I'm in love with America. Scars from past mistakes, she forgives those at her gates, and she won't wall them out for living free. The whole world stands in awe of her, that's why she'll be my only girl, and I will stand so she'll forever be. I'm in love with America. For me, there are no replicas. Let all her children sing from sea to shining sea. I'm in love with America. Let all who hear it call, no, not a fear at all. I'm in love with America. Let all who hear it call, no, not a fear at all. I'm in love with America. I'm in love with America. I'm in love with America.